Hi, my name is Cristiana. I'm a master's student with the Barley program here at OSU, and today I will be teaching you how to cross Barley. And so the first step of making this cross is to emasculate the female parent. And so we found a head here that's still in the boot and looks fairly immature. So we're going to first unwrap this head and test it to make sure that it's at the correct stage of maturity. And so you do this by cutting the top off of just one of these forets. And I generally choose one in the middle because I find that gives the best representation for the head overall. And we're just going to pull out these anthers really quickly. So as you can kind of see, these anthers are fairly green, which is great. We don't want anything that's too mature, so anthers that are yellow or white, those will have already dehisced and pollinated the stigma inside of these forets. And so once we found our perfect head, we will cut all of the leaves and everything around it to give us a better access. And so we've done that. We'll next just cut off the awns. And again, this just gives us a better viewing of the head and easier access to everything that we need. And so once we've cut off the awns, we will then take our tweezers and we'll just remove these laterals. And so regardless whether this is a 2-row or a 6-row that we're emasculating, we still want to remove these laterals. And this just ensures that we remove all of the anthers and we don't miss any, causing unwanted self-pollination. So once we've removed them from one side, we'll remove them from the other side. And this is fairly straightforward. You just have to pull them off. So once we've removed the laterals from both sides, we'll check, just make sure we got them all. Looks like we did. We can then start to cut off the tops of each of these forets. And so this is sometimes called the egg topping method because these forets kind of look like little eggs. And so this is also very straightforward. We're just cutting off the tops and cutting right above the anthers, so just this much. And so when you're looking at this straight on, you can generally see the anthers, and so you have a good idea of where to cut. And you don't want to cut the actual anthers themselves, because we want to make sure that we remove all parts of them. So we just want to cut right directly above them. And so once we've done this on one side, we can move on to the next side. And it's just the same thing. You can see the anthers. And they kind of look like just it's like a darker bottom half of the foret. And this takes some time to perfect. And you can always come back and recut when you're removing the anthers, just to make sure that you have the easiest access. So once we've removed everything, we can start removing the anthers. And so this is also fairly straightforward. I usually start on one side and work my way up the head, and then start on the next side and work my way up. And so here what we're doing is we're just coming in from the top, grabbing all 3 of those anthers and removing them. And so we just will go through all of these, and it's a good thing to remember that each of these forets, they always have 3 anthers. So if you only catch 2, you know to look for the 3rd one. And this also takes a bit of practice to be able to grab all 3 of them. And so if you don't get them all on your first try, that's okay. Neither did I. Every once in a while, you may accidentally pull out only half an anther. And so when you do this, it's good to just go back in and make sure that you grab the rest of it so that these anthers don't mature and accidentally self-pollinate. And so this happens quite often. It just happened to me. But if you can't find the remaining half of the anther, or you think that you've mangled the stigma trying to get in there, it's okay to just pull off one of these forets. I do it, and it's just better to be safe than sorry, because when you pollinate, if those anthers are still there, you may have accidentally self-pollinated and not made your actual cross. So once you've removed all of the anthers, I like to go back and just check, make sure that I got all of them, all the parts of them on both sides. Yeah, that looks good. So now that we've done that, we can cover this, and we will pollinate this in about 2 days, 2 to 3 days. So on our little wax bag, we're just gonna write the date of emasculation. Today is May 6th, and our initials. And so when we come back to pollinate, we will fill in the cross and all other information. So we'll just take this, slip it right on over the head, and fold the bottom and close this with a paper clip. And so this just makes sure that no pollen gets in for the next couple of days until we come back and pollinate. So once we've chosen a pollen parent, we will test to make sure that the pollen is viable. And so generally we do this on the plant, but my limited video capacity forces me to do it off. And so we'll just remove the anthers from one of these florets. I generally like to rub the anther on my finger to make sure that there's pollen, and so you'll see pollen spreading once you do this. And so this one looks like a good head. And so we'll start by doing something similar to what we did with the emasculation. We'll cut off the awns first, and then we'll go through and cut off the tips of all of the florets. You don't have to remove any of the laterals because we want as much pollen as possible. So we'll just go through, we'll cut these all off. And this is fairly straightforward. It's similar to the emasculation, but you don't really have to worry as much about hitting the anthers because we want them to pop out anyway. So once we've cut off all of the tops of the florets, we will let this sit out for a few minutes, and this just helps the anthers to open up a little bit more. And so we'll set this down for a second, and we'll come back and we will pollinate. And so while we're waiting for this, I made this emasculation 2 days ago, and so we're just gonna pull the bag off really quickly, check to make sure that we didn't miss any anthers, on both sides, and we look good. So then we will write down our pollination date. And so today is May 6th. And then we'll also write down our cross. And so our female parent in this case is Lightning, and our pollen parent is Buck. So we will write this. And so by convention, we'll have the female first and then the male. And so once we've written everything down, we can put this bag right back on top and close it again. We can also make our tag for the cross, and so we just use these little blue tags. And so again, we'll write the pollination date, which is 5/6, the cross, which is Lightning by Buck, and our initials. And so this just ensures that since we're out in the field, if this tag gets lost, we have the cross written on the bag. If something happens to the writing on the bag, we have the cross. And so we just want to make extra sure that we know what cross we made. So we'll just take this and we'll wrap it around kind of the base of the bag and stick it in to the paper clip. And so now we know exactly when we pollinated and the exact cross we made. Okay, so it's been a few minutes since we've cut the tops of the top of the pollen parent, and so you can see the anthers are starting to stick out a little bit more, and it looks like it's ready to pollinate something. And so what we'll do is we'll first take our scissors, we'll cut just the top off of this bag, and then to pollinate, you just take your pollen parent, stick it up in the top of the bag, and shake. And so you just kind of rub it around the other head, making sure that pollen falls onto all of these stigmas. And once you feel like you've gotten a good coverage, we'll leave this head in here, fold back the top of the bag, and then just take a little stapler and staple this shut. And so again, closing this just ensures that there's no other pollen getting in, and that this is the only pollen in here. And as you can see, right here and right here, that's all pollen. And so we know that we've chosen a good parent, and we've most likely gotten pretty good coverage from this, based on how much pollen has fallen out of this head. And that is barley crossing. We also use the exact same protocol when we're making crosses in the greenhouse. We don't generally have to worry about putting the cross on both the bag and the tag in the greenhouse because it is a controlled environment, but it's always a good practice to do.